Jalen Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. Good Sunday morning, Belly Up Fantasy Live. I am Chase Thornton, coming to you live from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar here, joined by Captain Lou. We have an abbreviated crew so far this morning. Interesting developments here in the Belly Up Fantasy Live world. We knew, and Kevin Wilson and I reminded you Wednesday night, Kevin wasn't going to be here this Sunday morning, so we asked Captain Lou, our esteemed colleague here, to join us for the show and round out the crew. And you may be noticing that we are down a duck. Real Mr. Mallard is dealing with some car trouble. He's had a fun couple of days, folks. As predicted by myself and Kevin Wilson on the Wednesday night show, the Thursday night Patriot debacle really messed him up. He has not done well since the Thursday night Patriots game. Mr. Mallard has been moving, among other things. He's got a lot going on right now, and he did not need a flat tire this morning to round everything out. But we will soldier on because that's the kind of people we are here at Belly Up Fantasy Live. And we do have Captain Lou this morning. How are you doing, sir? It's good to see you.
Oh, Chase, thanks. It's great to be here. I'm doing fantastic. I'm still kind of on a high from Michigan winning the Big Ten championship last night over Purdue. I know it's college football, but you talk about making adjustments. That's what Michigan has done all year at halftime. So we'll make that adjustment. We'll make this show fly. I'm excited to be on. It's going to be fun. No,
you guys got to be doing great over there on the other side of the lake, man. Yeah, back-to-back Big Ten titles, back-to-back wins over Ohio State. I mean, yeah, you can't get much better over there. You lost your quarterback to Iowa. Well, quarterback to Iowa. So, but yeah. It's not like you don't have somebody already stepping up and taking the reins on that one. So,
boy, I know the future's looking bright for Michigan. They've got freshmen coming through like Loveland on that first catch, and it's going to be fun. I know it's a different topic, but we'll see down the road who Michigan plays on New Year's Eve. I personally hope it's not Ohio State right away because it's tough to beat a good team twice. But hey, they're there. Eventually, you're going to have to play them. So but that's yesterday. I'm ready for some football, for my Lions to bounce back. Hopefully we can see them go on a run. Who knows?
Speaking of yesterday, though, and speaking of the college, there was some shakeup yesterday. It's been an interesting weekend so far with USC losing, TCU losing. So we'll see how things shake out and what four actually make it in other than Georgia and Michigan. Georgia and Michigan both prove they belong there.
Yeah.
But
it's funny is selfishly, I want USC to get in. I know they're not going to because I think Michigan could roll them with their on offense. Lincoln Riley has brought his Oklahoma style defense to USC, which is non-existent, as Utah proved Friday night. Right. But the last thing I'll say on it was funny to watch Nick Saban campaigning at halftime last night. He's the same guy that 6 years ago pontificated that only conference champions should be in the playoff in the present format. And if that were the case, it would be Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and USC. But I think we both know Ohio State's going to get in. I would be shocked if they don't. And if Alabama gets in, it just proves the hypocrisy of the committee. And, they might be one of the best teams, but you know what? They didn't win when they had to.
They didn't earn their way into it. And I'm looking forward to, like you just said, they may be one of the best teams. And so with the new expanded playoff format that we're coming, that's actually coming earlier. Thank you, Rose Bowl representatives. Speaking of big news in the college football world, but they may be one of the best teams, but when you've got four, you only can let four in. You need to earn your way in by what you're doing on the field, not just how good everybody thinks you are kind of thing. It's not it's not quite the beauty contest that the BCS used to be.
Right.
So
You're right. 100%. You know,
it'd be one thing if they would have to go through 4 levels, like in a 12 game, 14 game, or 12 team or 14 team playoff.
Right.
But when there's only 4, it's not. Let the ones who won their conference and the bigger conferences, unless you get a real outstanding team like Cincinnati, played last year. It needs to go to the bigger conference champions. And I think at least Michigan and Georgia took care of business this weekend and proved they belong there. I would think Georgia will be 1. I would think Michigan will come up. It'll be 2. So it'll be interesting to see who they match both of them up with. So
I don't think the committee's going to want a rematch with Michigan and Ohio State right away.
Not in the first week. No.
And I think it's going to end up being chalk. And then who knows with that 4th spot, but it gives folks like us chance to banter back and forth about it. And
right? We got a few weeks to talk now.
Yeah, exactly. So you know what? That's the beauty of it.
So, all right. Well, real quick here. Yeah, let's move on to the NFL because that's why we are all here. We are winding down to the end of the fantasy season, if not necessarily the regular season. Regular seasons, we still got about a quarter left. Mm-hmm. But in the fantasy season, we are down to essentially the last 2 weeks or so of the regular season in most leagues. Week 13 and 14, that allows us a couple weeks afterwards for some playoffs and not have to run into the very last week of the season unless your league has some kind of weird, crazy schedule. We've already lamented. If you guys were watching, if anybody watched on Wednesday night, you saw myself and Kevin Wilson bemoan the NFL's bye week schedule. Only 2 teams off this week, Arizona and Carolina. Not necessarily, going to kill everybody's fantasy rosters yet, but next week we are looking at 6 teams on the bye in the last weekend of the regular season for most leagues. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a scramble to try and figure out some lineups for the last week of the year. If you're trying to get in, if you're fighting to get into the playoffs right now, 6 bye teams is not what you wanted to be looking at and be missing, a quarter of your roster in some cases. I know, we always advocate not to draft for bye weeks. Mm-hmm. Beginning of the year, you want to build out the best, most talented roster, figure out the bye weeks when they come, especially at the beginning of the year. You've got a month and a half before the bye weeks even come. But
right,
if they're going to continue to throw 6 teams on the bye on the last weekend of the season here, if this happens in future years, we may have to actually take that into consideration strategy-wise. But let's take a look at some guys who are in and out this week and some calls that have been made. Trevor Siemian, quarterback for Chicago, he's out, but Justin Fields looks like he's going to be in, which is good news for fantasy managers and good news for the Bears against the Packers, because the Packers have shown a remarkable history of inability to stop running quarterbacks. I know you pay attention to the NFC North a little bit, but what do you make of Justin Fields' chances against the Packers and in that game today?
Well, I think he's going to have a decent day. I would start him. It wouldn't be one of those start him or sit him. I would start him. I think that Green Bay's defense has been, average at best. And I like his mobility against them. It's going to be interesting to see how banged up he really is. And it's hard to tell as far as with Aaron Rodgers. Apparently he's going to be a go. He's got that psychological factor going for him against Green Bay because he technically owns them. We'll keep it clean to what he said.
Still.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously obviously Fields is going to be the focal point of that offense. I don't know if he'll have the type of day he had against Detroit a few weeks ago, but I definitely think he's a starting, a legitimate starting point for your fantasy team if you've got him this week.
No, I agree with that. I had, before it was clear whether or not he was going to play, I still had him ranked in the top 10 this week.
Yeah.
I had him ranked that high because I figured, hey, even if he doesn't play necessarily a full game, or even if he doesn't have the kind of game like you said that he had against Detroit, and that we've seen him have against other teams. The Lions are not alone. Don't feel bad on that.
No, and I think he can. He might get some passing yardage against that Green Bay defense because they're, like I said, not one of the better ones right now. I think
they have been suffering.
Yes.
Yeah. They have been struggling and scuffling all season. And now on the other side of the field for Green Bay, now as long as we're on the game, as long as we're on the topic, it looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to give it a go with his rib injuries. Ian Rappaport today comes out and says bruised ribs for Rodgers. Looked a little more severe than bruised ribs to me last week when he came out of that game. And typically, I've had bruised ribs as a football player in college. I bruised my ribs my junior year.
Boy.
And you can't move. If anybody hasn't had that injury, don't. Because literally you'd be surprised every move you try to make, every breath you try to take. You can't even lay down and be comfortable because every time you try to shift, your body wants to freeze up. But we've seen Rodgers play through some pretty rough injuries. We just learned that he's been playing through a broken thumb for most of the season at this point. But yeah, it does look like we're going to have, it's not going to be a Jordan Love, Nathan Peterman special this weekend. We are going to get to see actually Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers suit up. And yeah, like you said, Rodgers owns the Bears, and the Bears have not been good on defense, especially since they traded away every actual defensive player that they owned. But yeah, should be a better much better matchup having the two star quarterbacks in there, even on a down year. It is still Aaron Rodgers, it is still the Bears, but I like Justin Fields' chances from a fantasy standpoint of scoring some major points today. He's going to be missing his top receiver, Darnell Mooney, who's out on IR, but they still have Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool stepped up a little bit last week. They still have Cole Kmet. The Packers are not good on defense. They still have David Montgomery, so should be a fun game there. From that standpoint, I think we'll see some points scored, which we don't normally think of the Bears as being a point-scoring team, but
no,
the Packers have not been necessarily this year. Elsewhere around the league, David Njoku, tight end for Cleveland, he's going to be out today. He will miss the return of Deshaun Watson and all the drama, forthwith. Deshaun Watson has been activated. It looks like he will start against the Texans, his old team, today. Jacoby Brissett coming off a big win last week in his last start for them. But that's a big weapon that's out for the Browns, and a big weapon on a terrible tight end landscape. Again, Kevin and I bemoaned that all night on Wednesday. But tight end wise, it's been a nightmare this season. And for anybody who reads my stuff on the Belly Up Fantasy website, the Blitz pickup is making a triumphant return this week after our holiday hiatus. And I just got done writing about Travis Kelce at tight end is almost 100 points ahead of Mark Andrews, who's in second place for scoring among tight ends. And that to me is just an absolute, it boggles the mind. We all know that Travis Kelce is the best tight end in football. And we all know fantasy-wise, we all know that he's the top option. But to see that he was almost 100 points of Andrews, even though Andrews I know has missed some games, and there are no other options at tight end right now that you can count on in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Travis Kelce's 33 years old and having his best offensive season, career high in touchdowns right now at 33 years old. Just amazing. But with David Njoku out, it takes away one more weapon at that tight end position. Now I know you do some betting. Do you pay attention much to the fantasy side? I know you have a fantasy team or two as well, but do you pay attention much to the fantasy side of things when you're betting? And
100%. I do, I'll give DraftKings a shameless plug because that's who I use. And I do the single game parlays. And a lot of times I look at the fantasy side of it I'll give you Travis Kelce, for example, the over under on his yardage. And it's amazing. You bring up such a great point on him. On my fantasy teams, my dad had to draft for me because I do high school play-by-play, and our league drafted on our first game. And I said, Dad, I don't care. I said, Dad, I don't care what you do. I want Travis Kelce is my first pick. After
Yep.
that, you do whatever. And I got to tell you, my 82-year-old dad drafted Patrick Mahomes, and he got me Travis Kelce, and he got me Jacobs, and
Yeah, you lucked out.
Jamal Williams from Detroit. So needless to say, he's done quite well for me. But your point is well taken with the tight end market. And I look at a guy like TJ Hawkinson. I thought going to Minnesota, he'd be, he would really do well. He's up and down. I know he's had a couple of fumbles and whatnot, so he's not as dependable, especially with that lineup. But
Right.
it's funny because I'm looking at a teaser bet totally off the tight end subject for the Lions game. And I thought the best bet that I'm looking at is the fantasy situation with the two quarterbacks. I'm taking both Goff and Lawrence today over 199.5 yards. And I'm going to piggyback that with over 46.5, I believe it is, total points. And that's an even money bet. And to me, it seems with the way those two defenses are.
With those defenses and the way those two quarterbacks can sling it. Yep.
In Detroit, on a fast track, I think it's very possible that they could do that. And so, I do look at the fantasy side of it. And if Zay Jones, I think, is going to have a good day for Jacksonville. And one to keep an eye on is Marvin Jones. He always seems to do well against his former team.
Right. Yeah. Coming back home in a way.
But I'm not going to bet the outcome of this as far as who, with the point spread on the Lions. I, as a rule, don't usually bet on that game, but I looked at those passing numbers.
Yeah.
And
I agree with
I think
you.
Lawrence is going to be a good start for Detroit, or if you've got him on a fantasy league and you're desperate, you've got maybe, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but I think he's a good start this week against the Lions defense that still gives up a ton of yards through the air and likes to play that soft zone.
Right. And with the way that the Lions can score points, I mean, as many as they give up, they do score points on over there. I have Trevor Lawrence as number 9 quarterback ranking this week. Because I agree with you. I think that there are some points to be had in that game between those two defenses, but also, like we just said, the two quarterbacks that we know can throw the ball. You mentioned Zay Jones coming off a career day.
Yeah.
Last week, actually had I think 145. I think it was 145 yards, something like that. He had a great game last week.
Yeah.
Christian Kirk is still not tight end, wide receiver 10 on the season. He's been having a great season. Kind of rubbing that contract in everybody's face. Quietly, but rubbing that contract in everybody's face, who said, well, he's not a top receiver, and why did they sign him to that money? He, from a fantasy standpoint, he has lived up to the contract. We are thrilled. If you've had Christian Kirk, and I have him in several leagues.
Nice.
Didn't draft him as a number 1 or 2, but was hoping I might get wide receiver 2 numbers out of him. And here he's wide receiver 10. He's a number 1 on the season so far.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll tell you what I am excited about that team, not necessarily today's game, but that team is they get to infuse Calvin Ridley into that offense next year.
Yeah.
In all reality, we all expect that Calvin Ridley will be cleared and be able to play next season. And
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, putting Calvin Ridley alongside Christian Kirk and Zay Jones in that offense with the way that Trevor Lawrence looks like he may be developing and what he may be blossoming into, that could be a fun one to watch. And, speaking of future prop bets and that could be a fun offense to watch very quickly here under Doug Peterson. Again, elsewhere around the league, the Denver wide receiver situation is an absolute cluster. What mess. KJ Hamler placed on IR this week. Cortland Sutton is sick, so he's questionable still for the game. Jerry Jeudy with his ankle is still questionable. We don't have word on whether he's going to play yet. But there's an offense. We talked about it again a little bit on Wednesday. That no one really saw that offense absolutely falling apart the way that it did. They released Melvin Gordon this week. He's leading their backfield in total yardage. Latavius Murray has taken over, and we've all watched him take over as the lead back in that backfield. But the turnover in Denver at their running back position this season, between the Javonte Williams injury and the Melvin Gordon drama and Mike Boone being injured and on IR, and bringing in Latavius Murray and bringing in Chase Edmonds only to put him on IR. That's been an absolute roller coaster to watch. What are your thoughts on the Denver running back situation and Latavius Murray, who did not look good last year in Baltimore? What are your thoughts on that Denver running back situation? Would you want any part of that offense period right now?
I would stay away from that situation. And it's amazing all the hoopla that Nathaniel Hackett brought with him coming from Green Bay to be the head coach of Denver. And then, of course, you got Russell Wilson. And you thought, oh, boy, here he comes. He's going to be Peyton Manning 2.0 in Denver. And, the Tom Brady effect, this and that and whatever. And, yes, part of it's been the injury bug. I get it. But, boy, I got to tell you, Chase, the opening night when there was such disconnect between Russell Wilson and Hackett, it's just escalated there. And you talk about an underachieving team, and it's a shame because from a defensive standpoint, the Broncos came in and they looked good. And I thought I was one that thought that they might be able to challenge Kansas City in that division. And, I know
you're not alone. Just about the whole industry did. Exactly.
And, the Raiders, I think, have underachieved as well. And it's so funny. The Chargers remind me so much of the 1990 Detroit Lions, all the talent they had, and they couldn't get out of their own way sometimes. They're, right there in the mix, but it's weird. But getting back to Denver, Latavius Murray might be a hell of a nice guy, but I would not lean on him if I was looking to get into the playoffs. If I'm for my fantasy team, no, I'd stay far away from Denver as I could.
I agree. I want to stay away from it in just about every way, shape, or form. Even at tight end, now Greg Dulcich came on really, really strong when he finally came back off of the injured list there. And his first 3-4 games or so were really good. It was like a revelation. Oh, hey, look, we finally have a tight end that we can use elsewhere after the Albert O. I don't know what happened there. Albert O kind of got buried in Denver after he was a preseason darling of everyone's, myself leading that charge. But Greg Dulcich has not been great the last 4 weeks or so here. I think your word disconnect, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a perfect description of what that team looks like right now. They just do not look in sync and on the same page in any way, shape, or form. Between the coaching staff and what's happening on the field, between Wilson and his receivers, between the running game and the pass game, nothing looks like it's working like it should. And there's been some weird Russell Wilson drama that's come out, and that we're learning things about Russell Wilson that I don't think any of us really knew before. Yeah. But in terms of attitude, maybe aloofness or whatever, but I think that has to come back to Hackett, and I think it's going to be interesting to see whether or not he survives this season. Not necessarily maybe mid-season, but whether he's a one and done there in Denver, because it has just not gone well from top to bottom over there.
It's amazing how the old saying, winning cures a lot of evils, and that's all they did in Seattle is win. And so maybe Russell Wilson's diva-ness, for lack of a better word, was covered up by all those wins. You could tolerate it when you're winning, but boy, when you're not, that stuff is magnified. And I agree. I don't know if Hackett survives another year there. It's a mess, and they're not used to that in Denver. And I thought a little odd anyway that he got hired he was coach here for a while, and respected coach. I hear, and I don't doubt the man probably knows football better than I do, which is why he's preparing for a game today and I'm not. Right.
But you're talking about a guy who just kind of like Luke Getsy in Chicago, even though Luke Getsy looks like they've turned their season around down there in Chicago. You're talking about a guy who came from the Packers system and was their offensive coordinator, but never called plays because you don't, under Mike McCarthy and now Matt LaFleur, when you're the offensive coordinator in Green Bay, it's kind of ceremonial title because the head coach is the guy. He's the guy doing it all and putting it together. And it sure looks that way right now with Hackett. How much of – the Packers offense is falling apart this season, but it doesn't look like you can necessarily attribute that to Nathaniel Hackett being gone in Denver. And then, the Russell Wilson thing just – like you said, winning cures all ills, and I think it looked like might have covered up a lot of warts there in Seattle. He was a media darling, a league darling. Boy. I mean,
sure,
people loved him still. Some people do, I guess, but I mean, he has he's almost done like a 180. He's almost become like not even a scapegoat for what's happening there in Denver, but like more like a villain almost in terms of how people are viewing him. Interesting situation. We're going to take a break here real quick. We're going to listen to our first spot here from Manscaped, and then when we get on the other side, we'll cover a couple more people that are in and out, and then we'll talk about what we see as the most fun games to watch today. So let's take a listen to Daniel Mader telling us about Manscaped here.
Welcome to Fresh Ball Fall. It's the season of pumpkin spice and making sure your crotch looks nice. That means sipping cider in a fall breeze and using Manscaped products to trim your balls with ease. That's right, today's show is brought to you by Manscaped, a company here to make sure that your foliage isn't the only thing shedding its excess leaves. Heck, even Mother Nature knows it's time to lose the excess clutter for fall. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Whether you're brand new or already with us at Manscaped, you could use the crown jewel of care for your family jewels, the Platinum Package 4.0. This glorious package, you can align your entire hygiene routine all in one swoop. Inside the 10-part Platinum Package is everything you know and love about the Performance Package, plus some shower goodies included to elevate your grooming game to platinum. You can now completely upgrade your shower routine with the Ultra Premium Body Wash and Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo and Conditioner. You'll have your skin and hair feeling hydrated and smelling fresh. Don't forget to apply their aluminum-free Ultra Premium Deodorant. And don't worry, it's not pumpkin spice, it's a cologne-quality fragrance. Get the Platinum Package this fall. These products are guaranteed to be hits for your dangly bits. Go to manscaped.com to get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Manscaped, clear out the leaves. It's your tree trunk's time to shine.
Okay, thanks for that, Daniel. We appreciate that read very much. We love our folks over there at Manscaped. If you don't have anything of theirs, get over there, use that Belly Up Fantasy code, and get yourself some, because if nothing else, they've got a whole ton of grooming products and various ablutions for your nether regions and the rest of you too. It's not just about trimming. So take care of that. Get over there and pamper yourself a little bit, gentlemen. All right, so let's take a look here again. Now, some other guys that we know right now are out. There's still a lot of questionable guys up in the air right now. We haven't started to see the official designations for some of these guys come out. A lot of game time decisions today, but we know that from a wide receiver standpoint, Brandon Cooks in Houston is going to be out today. We're going to be missing him. Mike Williams has been ruled out. Kadarius Toney has been ruled out. And then there's a whole host of other wide receivers who are questionable on the day. Jamar Chase looks like he should go, but he's coming back from a fractured pelvic bone, so who knows if he'll actually be able to go. He thought he was going to be able to go net last week and then begged out. Darius Slayton is battling illness like almost every other player in the league, it seems like, this week. Richie James for the Giants is questionable as well. Zay Jones himself, actually, we just talked about him. He's questionable with a chest injury right now. So maybe a thin wide receiver market this week, in addition to missing DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown and DJ Moore to buy this week. But one interesting out that we already know about as well. We already know that Matthew Stafford's not going to play this week for the Rams. And that has been an absolute train wreck over there as well. And speaking of offenses that derailed, now we saw the rookie last week start, Bryce Perkins. looks like John Wolford's going to get the start this week for Los Angeles with Perkins available. But with how Stafford's battled injury and with the complete lack of success that they've had in any way, shape, or form in Los Angeles, Cooper Kupp is now on IR. Allen Robinson joined him, not that he was doing anything for anybody to begin with this season. They released Darrell Henderson. He's moved on, and he's questionable to play now today, and looks like he'll only play if Travis Etienne has a big setback in pregame. But I mean, that offense, there's not a whole lot to like there.
No.
If you are looking at do you see any usable part of that offense at all in Los Angeles for the Rams? I mean, ignoring the idea that Stafford may not play again this season, that we probably don't see Cooper Kupp this season again, is there any usable part of that Los Angeles Rams offense, or are you steering clear of that, even from a speculative standpoint?
If there was anybody, maybe Van Jefferson's a big, he's a big play threat, but can Wolford throw the big play ball? And I just don't see it happen. And I would steer clear from anybody on the Rams right now. I mean, I know they put Stafford on injured reserve, and so he'll be eligible, I think, in week 17. My question is, why would they even risk it? Why would he want to play? Because by then they're going to be, if not 3-12, they're going to be 4-11 or 4-12, whatever, and they're definitely they're going to be out of it. And which, from a selfish standpoint, I hope that he doesn't play again, because that boosts their draft pickup, which the Lions get right now. I think they're sitting at 3rd overall. So, but no,
that worked out about better than you could have hoped for in terms of draft pick positioning. Nobody wants to see Matthew Stafford injured, but
no. And I'm glad for Matthew Stafford that he got his ring. He did wonders for Detroit. He gave his body to Detroit, literally. And so, but I would steer clear of anybody from there. It's, as a matter of fact, in my, I'm in a survivor pool right now still, and I've got Seattle this week as my survivor pick going into LA. I just think not as underwhelming as Seattle's defense has been this year, I think that they have enough to beat the Rams, because I think Seattle's playoff lives are starting to be on the line a little bit. Geno's kind of regressed just a touch, but I think this is a game that could make him well playing against this Rams defense that's also kind of struggling.
No, I agree. I think if there are a few teams that you can target as get right games for your defense, and the Rams look to be one of them. The aforementioned Broncos for one, but the Rams, I think, definitely fit that bill as well. I think when their receiving core started to fall apart and went down, and they started having to play their backup quarterbacks, I think a lot of us, myself included, like I said, looked at Tyler Higbee, who had already been, especially in that horrific tight end hellscape that we're looking at, looked like he might be a real good option going forward, because who the hell else were they going to throw to? But you're talking about a guy that didn't have a target last week with a rookie quarterback in. You would have thought that the short, if nothing else, some dump offs to the tight end, especially a tight end as good as Tyler Higbee, would have been in play. Dude didn't see a target last week. I think that, I agree with you that Van Jefferson looks like he's probably the best option they have left. Kyron Williams in their backfield he has led the team from the backfield standpoint, snaps wise, carries wise, the last couple of weeks. But the way that their offensive line has just been playing, you don't want to have to rely on any of that right now. If I'm going to recommend anything on that team in terms of, emergency play for next week with Bynum coming up and desperation mode, I think Van Jefferson would be the guy, because I don't think that they can get their running game going, even if Kyron Williams turns out to be, Saquon Barkley 2.0. I just don't see it happening with that offensive line right now. So I agree with you there. We're going to skip anything that we can skip in Los Angeles right now. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about a couple of the games here that we've got going on today. Is there a game right now, when you look at the slate that we've got going on, it didn't look like a great slate on paper last week, and then we ended up having a great, fun, entertaining week, all up and down the board last week. Now this week, is there a game that you're eyeing up where you say there's a lot of fantasy points to be had there, there's a lot of fun prop bets to be had there, there's going to be some offense scored in that game? Is there one that you're eyeing up this week?
Yes, indeed there is. It's going to be at 425, and it's the Chiefs going to Cincinnati. I think, it's a rematch of the AFC Championship game last year that was in Kansas City.
Right.
From a selfish standpoint, I've got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce in two of my fantasy leagues. Then you're going up against Burrow, and Chase may play, but you still got T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And I've also got Juju Smith-Schuster, who is on my money league that, you talked about it with Tony out. I think Schuster's healthy or healthier now.
Yep.
I think he's going to get more involved in the offense. This has got the makings for a 38-35 type of a game, which is going to play right into my hands because I'm going to need it because I've got so many people that are questionable. I'm looking at my computer as we're talking. I know the inactives for 305 or 405 have yet to be announced. I've got Jacobs. You never know with him. I've got Slayton on my team. I'm trying to decide if I want to start him or Pittman. So I'm going to lean on Mahomes and Kelce and Schuster to, get me between them, hopefully around 80 to 90 points and to carry my team again this week, like, they have all year. So that's the game that stands out to me as one of the, maybe could have the most fireworks.
I agree with you there. Real quick here. I mean, I brought up his name earlier. Not that anybody was counting on Darrell Henderson this week, but he has been officially ruled out now. But I agree with you there. With not just Tony being ruled out, but Mecole Hardman is on IR right now. Yeah. I mean, they've been a little bit depleted in their wide receiver room there in Kansas City. But if there's any team that you want to be leaning on offensively, you can do a lot worse than leaning on the Kansas City offense, the way that Patrick Mahomes has been playing this season. In fact, again, I bring it up because I was just writing about him. Patrick Mahomes is averaging the second most fantasy points per game of his career, only behind his 2018 MVP season right now. Leads the league in yardage, leads the league in touchdown passes. He's playing phenomenal, even in the absence of Tyreek Hill. I think a lot of people, again, thought that when Tyreek Hill skipped town, was booted, however you want to put it. When Tyreek Hill left, I think a lot of people thought, well, geez, is this still going to be the same explosive offense? And they just kind of shifted to running it directly through Kelce rather than splitting time between anybody and Kelce. But I do like Juju Smith-Schuster, like you said and brought up. I think he is getting healthier. I think he's the guy to look at. One guy that maybe has kind of slid under the radar here in the last couple of weeks, Sky Moore, their rookie draft pick there that had some hype early in the season. And a lot of people thought, hey, he might be the new Tyreek Hill type in that offense. Hasn't done a whole hell of a lot so far this year, but the last 2 weeks, he's in each of the last 2 games, he's caught 5 of 6 targets. He's seen his heaviest usage here right now with Hardman out, with Tony missing some time. A guy to keep an eye on. Might not be a terrible stash if you're looking for a late season spark, or if you're absolutely hard up for receivers next week with the buys coming up. Keep an eye on Sky Moore. But I agree with you. There's some points here. Neither one of these defenses is a real juggernaut, shut the door defense. And the way that Joe Burrow has been playing, again, whether or not Jamar Chase is in play, T. Higgins has picked up the slack. Tyler Boyd is still Tyler Boyd. Yeah. Hayden Hurst has emerged in that tight end landscape as someone who is at least an option, having one of his better seasons of his career too. So Joe Mixon is still questionable. Last I saw, they might want to give him a go, but I heard some scuttlebutt on Sports Talk Radio this week, and the more I look at it, the more I agree with it, that Samaje Perine, can get you some points and can play the game. Right. I mean, he's not ever going to be a spectacular, flashy player. His 3 touchdown game 2 weeks ago aside, he's not Joe Mixon. but you know he can run. You can run your offense with him in there, and you're not necessarily concentrating on the run game anyway when you've got Joe Burrow and all these options that they can throw to. I don't know if you want to rush Joe Mixon back when he's had a several week problem now getting out of the concussion protocol. You're going to want him if you have to meet this team later on in a month and a half, 2 months here in the playoffs. Also, how cool is that back-to-back weeks now? The Bengals played the Titans last week. They saw the Titans last week. Now they're seeing the Chiefs. It's like they're running through their playoff schedule from last year all over again. But no, I agree. I think that game has a lot of potential for some offensive points. Just like we talked about the Lions game. The game I'm interested in, and it's kind of a one-sided interested in. I'm not necessarily interested in from the standpoint that I think that there's going to be a double offensive explosion here, but I am very interested to see this Browns-Texans game because I want to see what Deshaun Watson actually looks like now after almost 2 years off the field in any meaningful capacity.
Yeah.
He played very little bit in the preseason, did not look great then, but it's preseason. So even if he lit the world on fire, nobody'd be, shouting it from the rooftops. Amari Cooper has had a great offensive season with Jacoby Brissett under center. Has been a top 10 wide receiver quietly, not getting necessarily some of the hype that the Devontae Adams is and Tyreek Hills and them of the world get, but can he continue that with Deshaun Watson? Can Deshaun Watson somehow elevate that? Could Amari Cooper go from being a guy that was reliable in your lineup to an absolute juggernaut here over the last quarter of the season and really, boost people? Is Watson still, mobile? Does he still have the arm that I'm sure there's going to be some field rust, but I'm very anxious to see how he plays, especially when he's playing a team in Houston that's, the Browns, in all honesty, should win if you or I are out there behind center today.
Boy, you would think so. No, that's a great game. That's a great pick. My first question is, how is his continuity going to be with these guys? You mentioned Cooper. He's having a great fantasy year. And it's so funny as I've been offered, I had a guy that has been wanting to trade me him. But he obviously wants a king's ransom for him, and I'm not doing it. But Cooper, I think he and Cooper could be a dynamite combination. And it's one of those things, Chase. There's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of distractions with, the coincidence of him going to Houston to play where he was all the garbage that he went through down there. But once he gets on the field, he takes his first hit or runs his first little bootleg. That's all going to be in the rearview mirror, at least for 3 hours.
Right.
And the rust factor is going to be it. But like you said, I think from a playing standpoint, he couldn't pick a better scenario because this Houston team, let's face it, they're not that, they're bad. And
they are very bad.
I picked up their Cleveland's defense for my fantasy matchup today. And I'm hoping that they may give up a few points, but they'll get some sacks and some turnovers. And I want to see how he meshes. And you mentioned that with Njoku not playing, I think Cooper's going to be a big play today, and it's going to be fun to see how that works out.
Yeah. Now, I actually had a question. Somebody posed a question to me on Twitter yesterday, some start-sit type questions, and they were wondering about Donovan Peoples-Jones now being a good option. Yeah. He's had a quietly good year too, and he's been quietly very usable this year. Not a superstar by any means, but he's had a good year. I liked him coming into the year because he's young and he's fast. I think he complements Amari Cooper well. I think he complements David Njoku well. Mm-hmm. And then, the Watson factor, if Watson turns out to be some semblance of the quarterback that we had seen him be previously in his career, this passing attack could go. I mean, you could go from a team that is one of the best rushing teams in football with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt to a team that is just as deadly with the pass attack. This could be a real fun team to watch. I don't know that they put it all together so far this year going forward, but going forward now next year, might be real fun. But Donovan Peoples-Jones is one too, being a deep threat, and having now Deshaun Watson, under center. Somebody said, Watson might be angry slinging it today. he might be ready to rear back and just toss it deep and try and hang a big one here on Houston. That intrigued me. Like I said, I'm very interested to see what his usage looks like. Other side of the field, I mean, Houston has not been good. Kyle Allen over Davis Mills was not necessarily the answer. It wasn't. I don't think that was the problem down there.
No.
They're missing Brandon Cooks, so
yeah.
Nico Collins, Chris Moore type passing day. Do they start using their tight ends more? Jordan Akins, but also Brevin Jordan. Dameon Pierce is a guy that a lot of people liked coming into the season. Looked really good in preseason. Looked really good early in the season. Has kind of overcome the idea that they're not a great offense. And even though he's kind of been more of an early down running back, not necessarily that 3 down, not used as, I should qualify, a 3 down threat. Dameon Pierce has had a good season, but he's tailed off here the last couple of weeks. It would be really nice, I think, from their standpoint. They have to use the weapons that you have.
Yeah.
He's Dameon Pierce and Brandon Cooks. Now, Brandon Cooks, we said, is out, but they're your 2 best offensive players, regardless of who's playing your quarterback right now, regardless of, of all the hype that we keep wanting to pile on Nico Collins, whether he's actually earned it or not.
Right.
Run your offense through your best players. And right now, Dameon Pierce is your best player. It shocks me that they take him off the field as often as they do. I'm a Badger fan. I like Dario Gumbawale. I watched him up here, and he's a good dude, but come on, he's not Dameon Pierce.
That's another team I just can't figure out. Lovie Smith, that was a head scratcher last week, not starting Davis Mills. And I don't get it.
He's regressed a little bit this season from what he looked like last year, but again,
the hell?
I don't necessarily think it's his.
No.
I don't think he's the major issue down there. I think
not at all.
Plenty of systemic issues there.
I don't understand. So yeah, Kyle Allen's that was a head scratcher, and that's why I think, like we just said, I think this is a perfect situation for for him to come back in at quarterback and for Deshaun to come back in. He might make a couple of mistakes, but he's going to be playing.
It's going to be a hostile environment. It'll be a hostile environment from a fan standpoint, I would think.
100%.
But it's a stadium he's familiar with, so it's not. Yeah, I mean, great.
Yeah.
And like you said, the first time you get smacked in the mouth, now, hey, game on, here we go.
For sure.
I am interested to see that game, though. I think that he shouldn't be under a ton of pressure in terms of. I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to have to run a 2-minute drill to win this game today.
No.
So he should be able to take his time, be comfortable, and maybe shake out the rust in a good way this week. That's a game I'm looking at there. We've got to start sit question here real quick from Darren John Lichterman here. He wants to know Debo or Juju this week. Well, that's an interesting question there, Darren. We talked about Smith-Schuster here a little bit. Debo is still, as of airtime, is still questionable right now.
I actually looked at it. They haven't said anything. They're probably going to wait until 3:05 Eastern time.
Right. Yeah. And that's part of the problem there when you have to wait for that late game. Now, the nice thing about it is Juju's played in the late window as well. So you can give it some time and wait for Debo's, designation. But between the two of them, ignoring injury situations, if they're both healthy, who do you like better in that situation there, in that standpoint?
Juju or Debo?
Juju or Debo?
I would go with Juju. I just think that, with Tony out and with Hardman on the IR, and I just think it's going to be a track meet. I really do. And I would lean to Juju. Debo, I know he's a they run him out of the backfield more than they would Schuster, obviously. I just like the big play element. I honestly think that Schuster's going to get anywhere from 8 to 10 targets, if not more. And I think the potential for him to get anywhere from 80 to 100 yards receiving and a touchdown, I just think fantasy-wise, I would go with Juju.
Now, Well, I don't disagree with you at all there on the potential for Juju to have a big game this week. Yeah, and you say his potential for 8 to 10 targets. I think that's right in the wheelhouse. He hasn't seen that many in the last couple of weeks, but before that, he saw 12 targets in week 9 a couple of games ago. And before that, he was averaging basically 8 targets. I mean, he's almost literally like clockwork, 8 targets a game. And with Tony out, with Hardman out, I think I agree with you there. Plus, their run game is a little bit in flux there too. It looks like Isaiah Pacheco has taken over as their early down rush back, but Jerick McKinnon is getting the pass work there. But Jerick McKinnon's been a little under the weather as well. I agree with you there. I think that Juju's got big explosive ability. I do have Debo ranked higher this week if he's healthy. Okay. Elijah Mitchell now going on IR, so they're down to their 4th option essentially. After you talk about the Jeff Wilson trade, they've got one of the best options in the entire game and Christian McCaffrey, but behind him now you're talking about falling back to Jordan Mason, Tyrion Davis-Price kind of territory. A couple of rookies that we haven't seen a ton out of. Deebo Samuel, we know, is that dual threat, and Jimmy Garoppolo has been effective this season throwing the football, and there's starting to be some talk now about is he open to coming back next year, and will he come back next year? And that'll set up another fun offseason of drama for Fantasy Jesus and all the other 49er fans out there. Will he, won't he, will it be Trey Lance or not? But I do have Debo ranked higher, Darren, to answer your question, but I do agree with Captain Lou that Juju Smith-Schuster looks like he might be primed for a big week this week against Cincinnati. You can't really go wrong. I guess if I were you, monitor that health situation for Debo. If you're going to go strictly by my rankings, I have Debo ranked higher. But if you want to go for like the explosive possibility and upside, Juju might be a good play there. All right, let's take a look at we'll listen to our second spot here from True Classic real quick. We'll come back on the other side. We'll wrap things up. We'll try and hit the last news tidbits of the day, and then we'll release everybody back to their lives. All right, here we are from True Classic.
Football is back, baby, and our new sponsor, True Classic, wants you to look and feel your best even after a couple of brewskis or going full force on your fantasy football draft. Sure, it's football season, but it's also butt to couch season. Luckily, True Classic has the absolute best fitting clothing a man can buy. Snug in the arms and chest with a little extra space in the torso, their t-shirts are designed to keep you cozy and highlight your best assets no matter what you're up to. So if your special someone is upset that you're watching football all day, at least you can look good doing it. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men find the perfect fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at TrueClassic.com. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on skinny models with six-packs, but most of us aren't packing anything but a few beers. Fellas, you are wearing the wrong clothes. True Classic tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's time to highlight your best attributes with a t-shirt you can always confidently throw on. It's about time to get your fit together, so upgrade your wardrobe with True Classic and get 25% off at TrueClassic.com with promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Free shipping included on purchases over $100. That's 25% off at TrueClassic.com with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. If there's one bet you should make this football season, it's on True Classic. True Classic, look good, feel good.
All right, and now we are getting late enough here that the actives and inactives are starting to officially roll in. One question I know a lot of people had, and we've been looking at all week here, Antonio Gibson for Washington is active. I still like Brian Robinson better in that game, but Antonio Gibson looks like he will play today. Jaylen Warren is active for Pittsburgh. However, Najee Harris was given a clean bill of health earlier too, so those of you who maybe went out and picked up Jaylen Warren hoping that you could snipe a starting running back here late in the season, you're still dealing with the Najee Harris show. And Najee's a guy that has not had an impressive year, but has actually looked better the last few weeks when he's been healthy. So again, Jalen Warren, you're not going to get a ton out of him like you were hoping. Michael Carter now is officially inactive, so it might be the Zonovan Night Show over there. Fun name to talk about. Daniel Bellinger is active. Looks like he'll make his return from his orbital bone injury. You brought up Darius Slayton earlier. Darius Slayton is active. Kenny Galladay is inactive, which Kenny Galladay has been inactive even when he's been active, so I'm not worried about that. But Darius Slayton is playing. Richie James also active for the Giants there at receiver. Zay Jones is officially active right now. Travis Etienne Jr. is going to give it a go. He's no longer a question. Rex Burkhead is inactive. We just talked about the Texans there. Romeo Doubs for the Packers will be inactive again. I think Christian Watson looks like he's taken that bull by the horns anyway over there. It does bode well for me going forward in the future. I think I like the idea that the Doubs had looked so good when he's been healthy, but now that Watson is coming up, there's been the debate: will Rodgers leave? Will he not leave? Will he still be there? I think that contract situation precludes him being gone next season unless he decides to quit
100%.
altogether.
Right.
But looking at it from the other side of the lake there, it looks like if they can shake it all out from this season, maybe maybe this season was just a hiccup. They may have reloaded from an offensive standpoint here in Green Bay. It would be nice to see, from my standpoint, it would be nice to see that shake out. But we could see some fun battles between the two teams coming up, between the offensive fireworks they're both capable of, or look like they might be capable of.
One thing to keep in mind too today, Bakhtiari's not playing. He had an appendectomy, so I think he's out. And I mean, he's been the rock for Rodgers. We all know that, but he's with his knee and everything, his knee situation. Add this on top of it. That's something to keep an eye on for Green Bay as well. I forgot about that.
Bakhtiari has been unquestionably one of the best tackles in the game when he's been healthy in his career. Yeah. I mean, he has proven that without a shadow of a doubt. But health has been the problem for the bulk of the last 2 years now.
Right.
And the dude just cannot catch a break. You mentioned appendectomy. He's not. Yeah, it's not a re-injury of a knee or anything like that. He didn't break a hand or anything ridiculous. Yeah, the dude's got an appendectomy problem now all of a sudden, and so he's out for this week. I know when I had an appendectomy on my 30th birthday, and they wouldn't even let me go back to running a saw for a month, but it's a different world in the NFL. I'm sure that as soon as they tell him he can't rip a hole in his gut anymore, he'll be going. But he's out today. You are correct there. Jerry, Judy, Cortland Sutton, both active for in Denver. So if nothing else, they will at least have their top two receiving options there. We said David Njoku out already. Seeing if we have any update yet on Mr. Debo. Not that I'm seeing here.
No,
still says questionable.
Yeah.
That late window, you're going to have to keep an eye on that one. Darren John Lichterman, you're going to have to keep an eye on that one for later. But one more game too quick before we get out of here. I want one more game that I wanted to bring up here because I think that it looks like this could be a fun matchup. And I can't believe we kind of didn't talk about this one earlier, but Dolphins and 49ers this week. We talked a little bit about some of the offensive skill players on the 49ers, but Dolphins and 49ers, you've got an offensive, unstoppable force versus the immovable object of the San Francisco defense. Yeah. And then, flipping it back around the other direction, then, you've got Brandon Ayuk, you've got George Kittle, who's George Kittling all over the place again. Christian McCaffrey has fit right in seamlessly into that offense over there in San Francisco. This is a game that could be real fun to watch. I think the big question is, can San Francisco's defense keep up with and hold that explosive Miami offense down enough that they can do what they need to do offensively to stay with them. This is a game that could, it's a hard one to read. It's a hard one to read from a betting standpoint. This is a game that it wouldn't shock anybody to see this be 24-17. It wouldn't shock anybody to see this be 44 to 32.
Agreed. Agreed.
Is there, what do you make of that matchup there between the San Francisco defense and the Miami offense? I mean, which side of that would you be coming down on if you were?
Boy, if I had to put money on it, I would potentially maybe just bet the over under on this one. Miami's coming in, they're undefeated with Tua as a starter this year. And, but they're traveling cross country, which doesn't mean as much as it used to in the older, in a while back. But
they did. They didn't have
Hill has got 87 receptions already. Tua's hot, like you said. They got Waddle. This is a tough one to call. I agree with you. I think there is going to be some fireworks in this one. The defense for San Francisco is going to be put to the test. And I think they are fortunate to be home at this one. And the only reason I say that is they don't have to play a team like this in the humidity of Miami. I mean, it's going to be like 55 degrees in Santa Clara today. It's going to be clear, but that's perfect weather. Wow, that is a sneaky good game. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm staying away from it from a betting standpoint, but from a fantasy standpoint, I'd look for Waddle to have a decent game in this one. I think he could be, from a fantasy standpoint, I think the one to keep an eye on. Obviously, Hill's going to get his targets, but I think Waddle, this could be his game.
I love that, everybody, the question was coming into the season, well, can Tua's arm keep up with Tyreek Hill because he's so damn fast? And my point all along was that Tyreek Hill's game is not it's not Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Deshaun Jackson game.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek Hill is not simply run as fast and far as I can and you throw it and I'll run to it. He has always run shorter, good routes and taken the ball and then exploded because no one can catch him. He's so damn shifty. Jalen Waddle is the one that has the 17.2 yards per reception. Tops of anybody in the top 20 in the league, of the top 20 fantasy scorers. And they're both in the top 6 right now in fantasy scoring, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Mm-hmm. And if speaking of betting and bets you could have won and money you could have had in your pocket, if you would have put money down that Tua Tagovailoa would lead the league in passer rating this season. Wow. I think you would have, and by far, it's not even close. Yeah. I think you would have gotten you would have gotten a bunch of people to take that bet, and I think you would have taken them all to the cleaners. He's got a passer rating of 115.7 this season. You said they're undefeated without him. Well, it's because he's actually playing the game well. Right. Last year he had a 90.07 passer rating. And passer rating, and that's the days of analytics and that, and it's not the be all end all of everything, but it goes to show you that he has upped his game with these guys around him. They did not waste, the moves they made to bring in the weapons around him have not been in vain. They were right to trust in this guy. They were right to bring in Mike McDaniels. They have put it all together down there. They look like a good team, and they could be a good team for a while down there.
I agree.
I think that it will be interesting to see if the San Francisco defense can hold them down enough, because Jeff Wilson has been good. Yes. Revenge game type factor today. And Mike McDaniel's revenge game-ish. I mean, not that they kicked him out. They didn't kick him out of town. He took an upgrade in his career. Right. But he's going to want to stick it to him, and that he's going to want to show that hey, we are ascending. We're on our way. We've arrived. And Jeff Wilson has run the ball really well. They get Raheem Mostert back today from injury, so they've got a 1-2 punch at running back. They've got 2 of the top 6, like we just said, receivers in the entire game. Mike Gesicki is not necessarily a pushover if they actually use him in the game. Tua is playing well, and fun game to watch. I think it's going to be a real fun game to watch. And then on the other side of things, we've always got Christian McCaffrey. That factor is always a threat. If Debo's healthy, you've got 2 of the best Swiss Army knives in the game there between him and McCaffrey. Ayuk has looked good when they've used him. Juwan Jennings actually scored his first touchdown last week. George Kittle. This is a game that if you can find it on your TV, if you're not preempted by Seahawks Rams. Sorry, Kevin Wilson. I know you want to watch that Seahawks game, but if you're not preempted by one of the other games on Fox, 49ers Dolphins could be the game of the week to watch there, the more entertaining game of the week. That's going to do it for us here then on Belly Up Fantasy Live. We never did get a duck sighting, but let's hope that he's off the side of the road and has, been able to come back to some sense of normalcy in his life after the Thursday night Patriot debacle. Come back to us, man. We love you. We love you, Doc. Sorry. Kevin will be back next week. I will be here Wednesday night, as always, with the Belly Up Fantasy Live Wednesday preview. Again, like I said, the Blitz preview or the Blitz pickup usage review from last week will be up here a little bit later in the morning. And good luck to everybody. Check us out over there, Belly Up Fantasy Live, bellyupfantasysports.com. Captain Lou, where can our viewers find you if they haven't seen you yet?
Well, you can watch me here. I'm obviously with the Belly Up network of podcast as well. You can check me out on YouTube on the Captain Lou Sports Network. Tuesday nights now until March, I do a show called the ACHA Power Play. It's American Collegiate Hockey Association. It's a quote unquote club organization for college hockey, but don't let that fool you. It's some great hockey. They've got over 450 teams in 5 divisions, and it's amazing. It's an amazing product. And I do a weekly podcast. I've coaches and administrators and broadcasters and players. We've got a great show lined up this Tuesday. And then Wednesday night, I have another edition of the Captain Lou Extravaganza where we always spotlight the Lions, obviously, but we're going to break down the college football playoff, and we'll preview that, and we'll preview the upcoming Lions game and whatever else is in pro football. So that is both nights, 7:00 Eastern time on the Captain Lou Sports Network on YouTube. We invite you to subscribe.
Sounds good. Check it out, everybody. And again, like we said, get over there to bellyupfantasysports.com and check out all the great content over there. You've still got time to be setting your lineups here before the for me, noon games. For the Eastern time zone, it's 1:00 games. But you've still got time to set your lineups before that, so you can still check out my rankings, all my colleagues' rankings, check out the Belly Up fans or the Belly Up family of podcasts as well, like Captain Lou just said. Until Wednesday night, then I'm going to be out. Slanjava, and enjoy your weekend, everybody.